Choosing to marry before my perfect sister was apparently unforgivable in my parents' eyes, and they proved it by refusing to attend my wedding. Now the flawless family image they worked so hard to maintain is finally beginning to crack. After 4 years together, I, 32F, married my partner 8 months ago. Everyone showed up to celebrate except my parents and my sister Molin, who is 30. My parents skipping the ceremony was surprising, but deep down it didn't shock me completely. My sister's absence, though, felt more predictable since we've never truly gotten along. Looking back, I probably should have expected it. To explain things better, I need to share a little about how our family has always worked. In fairness, I can't entirely blame my parents for constantly putting my sister on a pedestal. Throughout her life, she has excelled at almost everything she's touched. Wherever she went, she instantly became the center of attention. From the moment she could read and write, she seemed to win every spelling bee, science fair, and talent competition in elementary school. By high school, she had collected titles like class president, valedictorian, and prom queen, without much struggle. She was tall, slim, and strikingly pretty, which led her to try modeling during college before focusing fully on her business degree. I still remember the excitement when she landed her first modeling job during her sophomore year. My parents threw an extravagant party, inviting relatives and all of her friends to celebrate the moment. They even framed her first professional headshot and hung it in the living room, where it still hangs today right above the fireplace. Ironically, that same year I graduated with a computer science degree. My parents simply nodded, muttered a quick "well done," and went right back to planning my sister's next photo shoot. After finishing college, she wasted no time climbing the corporate ladder once she secured a position at a well-known company. By the time she turned 30, she already had a corner office and a company car, holding a senior executive position. Meanwhile, I quietly continued building my own life in the background. I'm employed at a well-known tech company, working as a mid-level software developer. It's stable, respectable work, and I'm genuinely satisfied with the career I've built. Still, it's not the sort of job my parents proudly brag about during family gatherings. Her comparisons were relentless. "Molin never has trouble with her weight," she'd say. Or, "You could look just as lovely as your sister if you tried a little harder." Those remarks followed me throughout my childhood and teenage years, lingering even when I was doing my best. Even though, by the time I reached high school, I had learned to brush off those comments, but the truth is they still left their mark. Over the years, I slowly accepted the difference in how we were treated. Eventually, I made peace with the reality that my parents would never take the same pride in my achievements as they did in Molin's. What choice did I really have? For years I chased their approval, signing up for classes they suggested, joining clubs they thought were impressive, and even trying modeling for a brief period, something my sister still reminds me I failed at. Yet no matter what I did, it was never enough. Sometime in my mid-20s, I stopped trying to win them over. Instead, I focused on building a life that belonged to me, advancing in my career on my own terms, and surrounding myself with people who valued me for who I truly was. Honestly, things became easier after that. Since my parents cared so much about maintaining the image of a perfect family, I kept my interactions with them polite but distant to avoid unnecessary conflict. During the obligatory Christmas dinners and family gatherings, then everything changed at a computer conference, where I met my future husband through a mutual friend. From the beginning, he noticed me, really noticed me, in a way my family never had. He appreciated my dry humor, admired my coding skills, and even loved my body exactly as it was. Not once did he suggest I change or compare me to anyone else. After 4 years together, he proposed one quiet evening at home while we were eating takeout with our favorite show playing in the background. It was simple, perfect, and completely us. Of course, I called my parents to share the news that I was engaged. Looking back, their reaction should have warned me something was wrong. There were no excited congratulations, just a long, heavy silence. Finally, my mother broke it by asking whether I was certain I wanted to dive straight into planning, though my mother immediately suggested I might want to improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father stayed mostly silent during the engagement party, which my husband noticed but I was too anxious to fully process at the time. Most of the evening, they huddled over my mother's phone in a corner, Later, my husband mentioned he overheard them talking to Molen, who was clearly upset. From what he gathered, they were fretting about how this wasn't part of their plan, and that they never expected me to marry before my sister. Even before I was engaged, there had been some small complications. My mother had already created numerous wedding Pinterest boards for Molen and showed zero interest in helping me choose a dress or venue. When I finally picked my own gown, a simple yet stunning A-line dress that made me feel beautiful, her only comment was that it was practical and suitable for my figure. Fortunately, my future mother-in-law treated me like the daughter she never had, and we ended up handling most of the preparations together. I carefully reviewed and double-checked the guest list with my fiancé to ensure nobody was missed before sending out both paper and electronic invitations. I knew my parents received theirs because the digital invitations included read receipts. Despite multiple calls, texts, and emails, they never gave a proper response, either ignoring me entirely or offering vague excuses about being busy and needing to check schedules. I couldn't let it consume me, as I was fully immersed in wedding preparations. The day truly turned out beautiful. After the morning ceremony, we hosted a relaxed afternoon gathering in a garden, keeping the atmosphere simple and warm. Many people told us we looked peaceful and deeply in love, and in that moment they were right. Still, there were quiet moments when their absence felt painfully real. Seeing the empty seats in the front row stirred an ache I couldn't ignore, and missing the father-daughter dance only deepened that feeling. Once the honeymoon and wedding celebrations were over, I began searching for answers. They insisted they were genuinely hurt, because according to them, they had never received a proper invitation. When I finally reached them by phone, my mother immediately launched into a long, emotional lecture, criticizing my carelessness, and reminding me how she had always imagined helping plan her daughter's wedding. She said she couldn't understand how I could exclude them from such an important day. Her reaction left me completely confused, because I was certain we had sent them both the standard invitations and the formal ones. During that same call, I checked our records to be sure, and everything confirmed it. We had absolutely mailed them, and even the delivery of the physical invitations had been verified. Instead of challenging them about what felt like an obvious attempt to gaslight me, I simply apologized for the supposed mistake and ended the call. Later that evening, my husband gently reminded me of several moments that suddenly made much more sense. He pointed out how oddly surprised they had seemed when we first announced our engagement, far from the joy most parents would show. He also mentioned how they repeatedly found excuses to avoid helping with the wedding preparations. He admitted he hadn't brought these things up earlier because he didn't want to increase my stress while I was already overwhelmed with planning. But looking back, the pattern now felt impossible to ignore. It seemed the idea of me, the less accomplished daughter in their eyes, getting married before their cherished Molen was something they simply couldn't accept. What should have symbolized love and new beginnings somehow became another battleground in their constant effort to protect the flawless family image they had built. An image that always revolved around Molen. Recently, she got engaged to a man she has apparently been seeing for about a year. From what I've heard through relatives and the family group chats I'm not even part of, my parents have been openly celebrating the news and eagerly planning an extravagant wedding for her. They've already started bragging about reserving upscale venues and selecting luxurious gowns, and my mother has been taking Molen to exclusive boutiques for private fittings, the kind of special mother-daughter moments I was never given. What's surprising, though, is that quite a few members of our extended family have suddenly decided they won't attend Molen's engagement party or wedding. It seems my parents' behavior during my own wedding quietly became a major topic of discussion among relatives. Whenever family members ask me about it, I simply tell them what I know. Whenever relatives ask why my parents didn't attend my wedding, I simply tell them what I honestly believe, that they couldn't handle the fact that I married before their cherished daughter. I don't exaggerate the story or try to gain sympathy. I just share the events exactly as I experienced them. A few days ago, my parents reached out and accused me of deliberately trying to ruin Molen's upcoming wedding. According to them, several relatives have started giving excuses to avoid attending any of her wedding celebrations. My cousin, someone my sister had been venting to, apparently told her that people are hesitant to show up because they've heard about the way my parents treated me. Now my parents insist that I'm spreading lies out of jealousy over Molen's lavish wedding plans. But the truth is, I've done nothing except tell people exactly what happened. Maybe instead of blaming me for the consequences, they should take a closer look at their own behavior. If the truth makes them appear cruel, that isn't something I created. As time passes, it's becoming more difficult to pretend that everything is normal between us. What happened during my wedding finally forced me to accept something I had tried to ignore for years, that no matter what I did, I would never be good enough for them. Their absence on my wedding day is no longer the most painful part. The hardest reality to face is realizing I never truly had the kind, supportive parents I once believed in, what I had always longed for. Right now, my focus is on building a life with someone who truly values me for who I am. Still, if anything significant happens, I promised I would share an update. It has been about 2 weeks since my last post, and quite a lot has happened during that time. Eventually, I decided it was time to meet my parents face to face and talk about what they did at my wedding, as well as their recent accusations that I somehow sabotaged my sister's big day. After reading all the supportive messages people sent, I felt ready to finally bring everything into the open. The moment they started texting me again about how I had supposedly damaged the family's reputation, I agreed to speak with them on the phone. As expected, the conversation quickly turned into a series of accusations. They insisted I was jealous of Molen, and claimed I had orchestrated everything out of spite. But this time, I responded in a way they never expected. Instead of defending myself like I always had, I calmly said, "You're right, I am jealous." There was a brief silence on the line before I continued, "But I'm not jealous of Molen's career, her achievements, or even her appearance. I'm jealous of the constant love and support you've always given her, something you never truly tried to give me." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then my mother quickly dismissed what I said, insisting I was exaggerating and claiming they had always treated both of us the same. That was the moment something inside me finally cracked. Years of buried feelings suddenly rushed to the surface. I began reminding them of every instance that had stayed with me. The birthdays when Molen's latest success overshadowed anything I had accomplished. The time my mother canceled the dinner we had planned for my high school graduation because Molen had received a modeling callback, and how the dress for her prom cost more than all of my college textbooks for an entire year. I kept going, even as my father repeatedly tried to interrupt and accuse me of exaggerating. I spoke about what it had been like growing up watching them spend years dreaming about and planning my sister's imaginary future wedding, while showing almost no interest in mine. Their response said more than any apology ever could. Instead of acknowledging anything I said, they turned the blame back on me. "Why didn't you ever say something if you felt this way?" they asked, as if I hadn't spent years trying to express how I felt. My mother insisted that I was rewriting the past, while my father added that by sharing these feelings with other family members, I had created unnecessary drama. They continued insisting that I was being unfair and acting out of bitterness. Then my mother said something that suddenly made everything crystal clear. She told me, "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths to try to ruin Molen's wedding out of spite. But we always knew you were insecure about her success. This isn't how we raised you." At that moment, I realized they weren't really listening to anything I had said. To them, their behavior and my feelings had nothing to do with the situation at all. The only thing that seemed to matter was how all of this might affect Molen and her upcoming wedding. Even during a conversation about why they had been absent from my own wedding, their biggest concern was still protecting her celebration rather than acknowledging the pain they had caused me. For once, I didn't try to smooth things over. I didn't backtrack or offer an apology like I usually would. Instead, for the first time in my life, I spoke honestly and directly. "You're right about one thing," I told them. "You were the ones who raised me. It was you who planted the idea in my mind that I would always fall short, that Molen's achievements would forever outshine anything I managed to do, and that protecting the image of your perfect family mattered more than anything I ever felt. But along the way, you also taught me something you never intended, that I deserved more than living like that." Before my father responded, the room fell into a long, heavy silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and controlled. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're terrible parents," he said coldly, "since you've already decided that's exactly what we are. It even seems like you enjoy watching us suffer. Because you're family, we believed you'd help us sort this situation out, but clearly you've already made up your mind." My mother delivered the final sting. Perhaps you just couldn't handle not being the center of attention, she said sharply. We always tried to treat both of you equally, Rebecca. If you chose to see yourself as the victim, that's not our fault. I didn't bother to argue. What would have been the point? Their words only confirmed everything I had been trying to explain all along. Even during this final conversation, they still couldn't bring themselves to acknowledge that they had played any part in what had happened. I had just hung up and whispered goodbye when I was struck by an unexpected sense of relief. Tears did fall, yes, but they weren't the desperate, heart-wrenching ones from my childhood. These were freeing tears. For the first time, I had spoken everything I needed to say, fully, honestly, without guilt or restraint. Later, my husband found me on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. He quietly sat beside me, taking my hand in his. They're never going to change, are they? I asked after a long silence. No, he said softly, squeezing my hand, but you have, that's what matters. He was right. The frantic, approval-seeking child I once was had vanished. I no longer needed my parents to affirm my worth, though accepting that they will never be the parents I needed is painful. It pales in comparison to the agony of hoping they would change. For the first time, I could let go. The wedding, the family drama, they no longer controlled my emotions. I had voiced my truth. Now it was theirs to handle. Oddly, a lifetime of burdens seemed lifted. It wasn't the happy ending I had dreamed of with my parents, but it was the one I needed. The freedom to stop chasing a love that should have been unconditional. 3 days later, the situation took an unexpected twist. Maureen attempted to insert herself into the drama, but her plan backfired spectacularly. Yesterday morning, my sister sent me a carefully written message. Her signature condescending tone peeked through, making it clear she had absorbed every lesson in passive judgment over the years. She wrote about what I had said to our parents, was completely out of line. They've supported us through every stage of our lives, and given us everything, she wrote. You can't just label them as bad parents because you feel insecure about the choices you've made. Her words dripped with the familiar mix of moral superiority and subtle digs. She went on, criticizing my wedding. I get that it wasn't exactly what you imagined, but that doesn't give you the right to try to ruin mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that reflects the effort those of us who followed certain standards have put in. Not everything has to be a competition. I didn't respond. Experience has taught me that engaging with her only hands her more ammunition. After years of enduring her manipulative behavior, I've learned that silence is often the most powerful reply. I decided to block her number instead. Maureen has never tolerated being ignored, so I figured that would be the end of it. A few hours later, my husband called me at work, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Apparently Maureen couldn't reach me directly, so she tracked down his personal number, probably through a mutual acquaintance, and sent him a barrage of texts, detailing exactly why our sisterly relationship had failed. She began politely, positioning herself as Rebecca's sister, and someone genuinely concerned about the family's well-being. I feel compelled to reach out, but it quickly devolved into her true intentions. She told my husband he had a duty to help me behave more appropriately, simply because he was now part of my life. The messages grew increasingly condescending. Family dynamics are complex, she lectured, addressing my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, as if he needed her guidance, adding that my sensitivity might prevent me from seeing the bigger picture, she added, advising him to guide me toward reason before I supposedly caused irreversible damage to family ties. But the real kicker was her thinly veiled attempt to play on what she assumed were his ambitions. She wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could benefit your future. Rebecca's actions are only harming her own prospects and by extension yours." Having long seen through Maureen's manipulative veneer, my husband found the whole thing amusing. He especially enjoyed her assumption that her professional rank or potential networking opportunities would impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We went through the messages together, laughing at her audacity and marveling at how transparently she tried and failed to manipulate the situation. That night when I got home, I found myself laughing with my husband instead of feeling hurt or offended. Watching Maureen's manipulative tactics completely unravel especially on someone utterly unaffected by them, was oddly liberating. This encounter taught me something important about my sister. Beneath all her accomplishments and apparent confidence, she's still that insecure teenager who feels the need to put others down to boost herself. Her understanding of healthy relationships is shockingly shallow. When her direct attempts to influence me failed, she immediately tried to turn my husband against me, just as revealing as it was predictable. It was a familiar pattern. Back in high school, she had tried to manipulate my friends when she couldn't intimidate me directly. Different decade, same playbook, just a fresh target. I now see Moline's behavior for what it truly was, far beyond mere sibling rivalry. Throughout our childhood, she worked tirelessly to secure her place as the favorite, constantly reminding our parents and me of how superior she was. She felt the need to overshadow every achievement I had, and to highlight my flaws to anyone I befriended. My reaction to her tactics has changed dramatically. 10 years ago, her messages would have filled me with self-doubt. 5 years ago, they might have left me hurt and upset. Today, I'm simply done with the drama. Her transparent attempts at manipulation strike me as almost comical. My husband's response was perfect. Instead of getting drawn into her schemes, he calmly replied, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you address any future concerns directly to Rebecca. Have a nice day." It was concise, firm, and exactly the boundary we both needed. Moline sent one final message after failing to get the reaction she wanted. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, her help only reinforced my determination to step back from the toxic patterns in our family. Nothing has changed. As her messages to my husband clearly show, she remains the same manipulative, controlling figure, convinced that any deviation from her vision of the perfect family is a threat. Perhaps the most satisfying part of the entire episode is how completely her attempts at persuasion failed. Instead of swaying anyone, she only reinforced my spouse's awareness of her tactics and strengthened my own resolve to maintain distance from the chaos she thrives on. I am more convinced than ever that staying away from Moline and her wedding drama is the right choice. My husband and I have decided to focus on building our own happiness. People say success is the best revenge, but I'm learning that real success isn't about impressing anyone. It's about trusting your decisions and surrounding yourself with those who uplift, rather than hinder your growth. By that measure, I've never felt more accomplished. Third update. 2 weeks after my sister's failed attempt to control my husband, the situation has taken an unexpected turn, and not for the better. Despite my parents' frantic attempts to repair their image, I discovered through family channels that they've been obsessively trying to rewrite the story. They've been calling each relative separately, accusing me of spreading malicious stories, claiming I was jealous of Moline's perfect wedding. According to them, I'm supposedly resentful because her celebration would outshine mine. In their latest version, they even allege that I intentionally excluded them from my wedding just to play the victim. It's almost laughable. They still live in the same house they've owned for 30 years, and their email addresses haven't changed since the early days of email. Yet they insist I sent the invitation to an outdated address. The good news is that their attempts to control the narrative are failing spectacularly. Many family members refuse to buy into their version of events. In fact, several relatives have shared first-hand stories of my parents' long history of favoritism. One aunt recounted how my mother had pulled similar stunts at previous family weddings to make sure Moline remained the center of attention. The most satisfying development has been seeing how my extended family responds to these manipulations. Key relatives, some of whom I never expected to take notice, have openly acknowledged my parents' patterns, validating my perspective and further diminishing their attempts to rewrite the story. Support for Moline's wedding has started to crumble. Certain vendors may no longer grant access to the exclusive venue, and even through family ties, connections that once seemed reliable are faltering. Surprisingly, a luxury garment business run by a family friend has faced unexpected scheduling conflicts as well. Last weekend, tensions hit a breaking point. When a relative casually asked about my wedding photos, my mother, consumed by jealousy, erupted. She launched into a defensive tirade, claiming I had changed after marriage and was deliberately trying to destroy the family. Her outburst completely backfired, shocking relatives who had been unaware of the full situation, and further damaging the carefully cultivated image she had worked so hard to maintain. The irony is undeniable. My parents' frantic attempts to uphold their perfect family facade are precisely what's causing it to unravel. Every time they try to explain or justify their absence from my wedding, they end up revealing more of their own failings. I don't need to respond to any of this directly. The truth is handling itself. Every time Moline or my parents try to twist the story, they only expose more of their own destructive behavior. All those years I endured their treatment in silence, hoping to preserve harmony, only enabling their actions. As my husband put it best, over decades, they built the illusion of a perfect family, but it rested entirely on emotional manipulation and favoritism. It was always destined to crumble. Personally, I've never felt stronger or more at peace. I no longer have to worry about attempting to win my parents' approval. The stress of controlling Moline's emotions has subsided, and I'm not concerned about upholding their ideal family image for the first time in my life. Sometimes the best retaliation is just letting the truth speak for itself rather than taking action. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the courage to advocate for myself. You have no idea how much your guidance and encouragement have meant to me along this path. Sometimes you need to see what true family support looks like from strangers you meet online. Thank you for reading. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to A Father's Wrath and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more shocking real-life stories.